The phone rang at 7:00 a.m. on a Saturday, and I already knew the day was going to be a disaster. My gut feeling never let me down. The caller ID flashed Linda, my mother-in-law. 7 in the morning on a Saturday, that was already suspicious. "Alice, I need to talk to you. Seriously talk. I'll be over in an hour." And the line went dead. Not even a hello. That's how she always was, bossing me around like I was her personal maid. I'm 48 years old, and she still talks to me like I'm a high school kid. I glanced at myself in the hallway mirror. My red hair was a mess from sleep, and my face still had pillow creases. Okay, I had an hour. Quick shower, then coffee, and we'll see what this old biddy had cooked up this time. Michael was still asleep. My husband was always a night owl. He could tinker with his car in the garage until 3 a.m., but good luck getting him out of bed before 10 on a weekend. I didn't wake him, let him rest. I could handle his mother on my own. 45 minutes later, the house was spotless. I'm not the type to let anyone say my house is a mess, and Linda always found something to pick at. The curtains weren't hanging right. There was dust on the windowsill, as if her place was as sterile as an operating room. The doorbell rang at precisely 8 a.m. Punctuality, my mother-in-law's only positive quality. I opened the door to see her in all her glory, a severe gray pantsuit hair pulled back in a tight bun, lips pressed into a thin line. A classic drill sergeant. "Hello, Linda, come in." She marched into the living room without a greeting, her critical eyes scanning everything, searching for flaws. I offered her tea, but she waved it away. "No time for tea, sit down. We need to talk seriously." I sat in the armchair opposite the sofa where she'd settled. I wondered what was bothering her this time. Usually she'd start with complaints about my cooking, cleaning, or how I dressed. But this immediate seriousness was new. "I'm listening." Linda pulled some papers from her purse and laid them on the coffee table. I noticed official-looking seals and stamps. My heart skipped a beat. What if something had happened? But no, her face was angry, not upset. "Do you have any idea the kind of trouble Ethan is in?" Ethan was Linda's older son, Michael's brother. We barely spoke to him. He lived in Chicago, worked for some company there. The last time we saw him was at Christmas 2 years ago. He looked rough then, drank a lot, and was constantly borrowing money from Michael. "No idea. What happened?" "What happened is he's in debt up to his eyeballs." Linda's voice grew sharp. $50,000, credit cards, payday loans, some other nonsense. He could go to jail. I stayed silent. What could I say? Ethan was a grown man, 42 years old. If he wanted to get into debt, that was his business. But judging by Linda's face, this wasn't about sympathy for her older son. "And what do you propose?" I asked. "Propose?" She bristled. "I'm not proposing. I'm informing you. We are going to save Ethan, the whole family, and you have to help too." So that was it. She was here for money again. Michael was constantly helping his brother for car repairs, dental work, whatever else, and Ethan barely ever said thank you, just took the help for granted. "How much this time?" I asked, already tired. Linda stood up and started pacing the room. You could see she was agitated but trying to keep it together. She stopped by the window, looked out at our yard. "We don't have enough money, none of us. We need serious help." My heart beat faster. What did she mean? What kind of help? "Well, what kind?" She turned to me. "You work at the bank, don't you? You have connections, people you know. Maybe you can get him a good loan or get his debts deferred." I let out a breath of relief. For a moment, I thought she'd come up with something truly awful. "Linda, I'm just a loan officer. I'm not a manager. I can't pull strings for anyone." "Well, at least try." She returned to the sofa. "You understand Ethan is family." "I understand, but the bank has its rules. They only give loans to people who can pay them back. And from what you're saying, Ethan has a big problem with that." Linda pursed her lips. My answer clearly didn't satisfy her. "So you're refusing to help." "I'm explaining reality. Even if I asked my colleagues, they couldn't issue a loan to someone with a terrible credit history." "Well, maybe you could co-sign for him. Or Michael." There it was. She wanted us to be guarantors for Ethan's debts, so if he defaulted, the bank would come after us. "No," I said firmly. "We won't co-sign." "Why not?" Linda was indignant. "Ethan won't just disappear, he'll pay it back." Linda, if Ethan could pay back his debts, he wouldn't have problems with creditors. He just got himself into a tough situation. His business didn't work out. What business? I was surprised. I thought he had a regular job. Linda hesitated. Well, he tried to start his own thing, some kind of online store, invested in it, and it flopped. And before that, what was it? Oh, different things, this and that. Ethan's a creative person. He gets bored doing one thing. I was starting to see the picture. Ethan was a typical schemer jumping from one idea to the next, naturally succeeding at none of them. And how many failed businesses has he had? What difference does it make, Linda snapped. The main thing is he needs help now. Just then, we heard footsteps on the stairs. Michael was coming down to the living room. I heard him yawn and shuffle in his slippers. He usually got up around 10 on weekends, but our voices must have woken him. Mom. He appeared in the doorway wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. When did you get here? What are you guys talking about? Linda's expression changed instantly. The anger vanished, replaced by a martyred expression. Mikey, honey, sit down. We need to talk about your brother. Michael glanced at me, then at his mother. It was clear he already suspected what this was about. For the past few months, Ethan had been calling almost every week with one request or another. What is it this time? He asked tiredly, sitting down next to me. Ethan's in serious trouble. $50,000 in debt. He could go to jail if we don't help. Michael rubbed his forehead. I saw the muscles in his face tense up. He loved his brother, but knew Ethan was to blame for his own problems. And what exactly do you want from us? Linda brightened, thinking Michael would be more compliant than I was. First, we need to take out a loan at least to cover part of it. Alice works at the bank. She can help with the paperwork. Michael sighed. Who's going to pay back the loan? Ethan, of course. He promised that as soon as things get better, he'll start making payments. And when will things get better for him, and what's he doing to make that happen? Linda blinked, flustered. Well, he's looking for a job, trying to start a new business. What kind of business? Michael asked. Something to do with the internet. He explained it to me, but I don't really understand all this modern technology. Michael looked at me, and I saw the exhaustion in his eyes. We both knew Ethan was just feeding his mother more stories about his latest pipe dreams. Mom, do you remember how many times Ethan promised to get his act together and how many times he's asked for help just this once? Linda shifted on the sofa. Well, a few times, but this is a really serious situation. It's serious every time, Michael noted, and zero results. Michael, Linda protested, how can you talk about your own brother like that? Mom, I'm telling the truth. In the last 3 years, we've given Ethan over $15,000. Has he paid back a single penny? Linda fell silent. It was true. Ethan never paid back borrowed money. There were always excuses. His paycheck was delayed. His car broke down, something else. But he's family, she mumbled. Yes, family. And that's why we've helped him so many times. But help needs to have a point. We're just enabling his irresponsibility. Linda jumped up. So you're refusing to help? You want Ethan to go to jail? Mom, he won't go to jail for debt, Michael explained patiently. At worst, they'll garnish his wages. Maybe put a lien on any property he has if he has any. If creditors sue, they'll win and the court will order him to make payments. Maybe that will finally force him to get a real job. Linda stared at her son in horror, as if he were suggesting something monstrous. You want your brother to go bankrupt. I want my brother to become a responsible adult, and for that he needs to clean up his own messes. Linda sat back down, but it was clear she wasn't giving up. Fine, no loan. But maybe you can lend him the money yourselves, at least part of it. How much? I asked. Well, maybe $5,000. That's not such a big amount for you. I chuckled. Not that big. That's a significant chunk of our annual savings, Linda. And where did you get information about our finances? Well, I see how you live. Nice house, new car. That was all financed, Linda. I lied. We have plenty of our own debts. No way. Linda didn't believe me. Michael makes good money. Mom, Michael intervened. Even if we had spare cash, we wouldn't give it to Ethan. Why not? Because we know we'd never see it again, just like all the other times. Linda's face turned red. So you're both against family, against your own flesh and blood. We're against bankrolling irresponsibility, I replied. You're so heartless. Linda lashed out at me. Someone's in trouble and all you think about is money. And what was Ethan thinking about when he got into debt? Michael pointed out. He wanted a better life, tried to achieve something at someone else's expense. Linda realized the conversation had hit a dead end, but she wasn't about to give up. A cunning look appeared in her eyes. All right, she said, surprisingly calm. If you've decided that, then I'll save my son myself. How? Michael asked warily. I have some savings. Not the whole amount, of course, but I can cover part of it. I didn't believe her. Linda had scrimped and saved every penny her whole life. She wouldn't spend her nest egg on Ethan's debts. Something wasn't right here. What savings? Michael was surprised. Well, I put a little aside for a rainy day, and this is definitely a rainy day. Mom, don't... Michael shook his head. Keep your money. Ethan will manage somehow. No, he won't. Linda flared up. Since you won't help, I will. Otherwise, it looks like I have one good son and one useless one. Mom, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. I understand that I have favorites and unfavorites. Michael gets everything and Ethan has to fend for himself. That was unfair. Michael had never been the favored child. On the contrary, Linda had always paid more attention to her older son. To her, Ethan was a misunderstood genius. Mom, what do favorites have to do with this? Michael asked wearily. It has everything to do with it. Michael married well, lives comfortably, and Ethan is struggling like a fish out of water trying to build his business. Mom, Ethan isn't trying to build anything. He's living in a fantasy world. How dare you? Linda seethed. Ethan is smart, talented. He's just unlucky. Luck favors those who work, I remarked, not those who wait for a miracle. Linda shot me a hateful glare. And you stay out of this. This is Pogrebny family business. Let's assume Pogrebny is their family name for this adaptation. Alice is my wife, Michael said firmly, and her opinion matters to me. More than your mother's opinion. On some issues, yes. Linda gasped as if she'd been struck. Michael, how can you say that? Easily. Alice lives with me, shares my problems and joys. You only show up when you need help. I'm your mother and I love you, but that doesn't mean I have to blindly follow all your demands. Linda sagged as if her legs had given out. It was clear she hadn't expected such resistance from her younger son. So it's decided, she muttered. No one will help Ethan. We can't solve Ethan's problems for him, Michael said softly. He's an adult. Adult? Linda scoffed bitterly. But he lives like a teenager. Mikey, don't you understand? If we don't help now, Ethan will completely fall apart. Mom, we've helped so many times. Did things get any better? Linda remained silent. Indeed, with every bit of our help, Ethan got into bigger trouble. Maybe it's time to let him figure it out himself, Michael suggested. Easy for you to say, Linda mumbled. She sat staring at the floor, visibly losing steam. But I knew this woman. She wasn't one to just give up. She definitely had a plan B. All right, Linda finally said, lifting her head. If you don't want to help with money, maybe you can help in another way. How? Michael asked cautiously. Well, you could let Ethan stay with you, temporarily until he gets his affairs in order. Michael and I exchanged glances. This was news. Ethan in our house. That was a nightmare. Mom, we don't have a spare room, Michael began. You'll find one. You have a big house. Besides, families should support each other. Linda, I interjected, his debts won't disappear just because he's living here. But at least Ethan will be supervised. You can help him find a job, get him on a schedule. I pictured Ethan in our house. From what we'd heard, he liked to drink, wasn't used to order, and considered himself a genius. Living with someone like that would be an ordeal. No, I said firmly. That's impossible. Why not? Linda demanded. Because we have our own way of life and we're not prepared to change it for a grown man who can't take care of himself. Oh, so that's how it is, Linda jumped up. So your husband's relatives mean nothing to you. They don't mean nothing, but I'm not ready to turn my home into a shelter for troubled individuals. Troubled? Linda seethed. You called my son troubled. What else do you call a man who at 42 can't support himself? Linda turned purple with rage. How dare you? Who are you to judge my children? I'm Michael's wife, and I have a right to a say in matters concerning our home. The home that was bought with your money. I was surprised. How did she know? What does that have to do with anything? It has everything to do with the fact that you constantly remind everyone that you're the boss here. I don't remind anyone of anything. I'm just protecting my rights. What rights? Linda sneered. The rights of a rich little upstart. Michael stood up abruptly. Mom, you're crossing the line. What line? I'm saying what I think your wife has shown from the very beginning, that she thinks she's better than our family. That's not true, Michael protested. It is true. She looks down on us like we're beggars. Thinks because she has more money she can boss everyone around. I stood up and looked Linda straight in the eye. Linda, if you can't speak to me respectfully, then we should end this conversation. Fine by me, she shrieked. I've already figured out you're no help at all. Selfish, both of you. Mom enough, Michael barked, but Linda was on a roll like a runaway train. No, not enough. Let your precious wife know what I think of her. Heartless, calculating, only thinks of herself. And who are you thinking of? I asked calmly. A family of my son who's in trouble. A son who created this trouble for himself. Help is for those who want to change their lives, not for those who expect others to solve their problems. Linda stood there breathing heavily, hatred simmering in her eyes. You know what, sweetie, she hissed. You may think you're very smart, but life is complicated. We'll see who outsmarts whom. Is that a threat? Michael asked. It's a warning, Linda replied, grabbing her purse. Families should stick together, and anyone who doesn't want to be part of the family... She didn't finish, but the meaning was clear. Mom, do you hear yourself? Michael asked tiredly. I hear and see that my younger son has chosen his wife over his mother. I've chosen common sense over insanity. Linda headed for the door but turned back. We'll talk about this again, Michael, and you'll realize you were wrong. When the door slammed behind her, Michael and I sat in silence for a long time. I felt this was only the beginning. Linda wasn't the type to give up after one defeat. What do you think she's planning? I asked. Michael shrugged. I don't know, but she's definitely planning something. Such a calm exit isn't like her. Maybe she really decided to help Ethan herself. I doubt it. Mom doesn't have as much money as she says. We were wrong. Linda had a plan, and we would find out very soon. We learned about Linda's plan on Monday. The first sign was a call from my colleague, Susan. Alice, she said, puzzled. Some woman came into the bank asking for you, said she was a relative. What did she look like? I tensed up. About 60, very stern in a gray suit. Introduced herself as Linda. I closed my eyes. It had begun. And what did she want? She was asking about your position, how much you earn, and also about the bank's lending policies, like whether you could influence loan decisions. What did you tell her? Nothing much. Said you were a good specialist, but the loan committee makes the decisions, not individual employees. Did she ask anything else? Well, she asked about your salary. Of course I didn't say anything. That's confidential information. I thanked Susan and hung up. So Linda had decided to find out what I could actually do to see if I could push a loan through for Ethan. Well, now she knew I couldn't. That evening, I told Michael about it. Mom's completely lost it, he said, shaking his head. Why would she do that? She was checking if I lied about my influence at the bank. And what now? I don't know, but I feel like this is just the beginning. I was right. On Tuesday, my neighbor, Mrs. Davis, called. Alice, dear, is it true your mother-in-law is ill? Ill. I was surprised. Who told you that? Well, I ran into her at the grocery store today. She was telling me what a wonderful daughter-in-law you are. Said you help your husband's family, give them money for medical treatments. And she also said she's moving in with you soon. I almost dropped the phone. What else did she say? Well, that you have a big house, plenty of room, and that it's gotten too hard for her to live alone, so you're taking her in. She praised you so much, said it's rare to find such a caring daughter-in-law. After talking to Mrs. Davis, I immediately called Michael at work. "Your mother has lost her mind," I blurted out as soon as he answered. "What happened?" I told him about the conversation with our neighbor. Michael swore. "Is she trying to make us look like villains to the neighbors?" "Looks like it. First she tells everyone how wonderful we are, and then she'll complain that we kicked her out. Damn it, we need to talk to her, and the sooner the better." But we couldn't talk to Linda. She stopped answering her calls, and when Michael drove to her apartment, her neighbors said she'd gone to visit relatives in a small town upstate. "What relatives?" Michael wondered when he told me that evening. "I have no idea. You know your family better than I do. Mom has a cousin in upstate New York, but they barely talk. Maybe she went to see her." "Why?" I shrugged. Who knows what's going on in that woman's head? On Wednesday, it became clear why. An official-looking letter from the state banking department arrived at my work. Some citizen named Sharov, Linda's maiden name, I'd later realize had filed a complaint alleging that I had abused my official position by refusing to help him obtain a loan and was demanding compensation for emotional distress. I reread the document several times, not believing my eyes. Sharov. Who was that? I didn't remember that name. I had to go to my boss, Mr. Peterson, and explain the situation. Mr. Peterson listened to me and shook his head. "Alice, are you sure you don't know this person?" "Absolutely. I would remember a name like that." "Then it's either a mistake or someone is deliberately slandering you." "What should I do now?" "Write a detailed explanation of your position. If there really was no such client, we'll prove it." I wrote the explanation and gave it to HR, but a bad feeling lingered. Someone was trying to sabotage me at work, and I had strong suspicions about who it was. That evening, I told Michael about the Sharov complaint. He thought for a moment. "Isn't that Mom's maiden name?" I remembered. "Exactly. Linda's maiden name is Sharov. I think she signed it with a man's name. Quite possible. She has a cousin named Arthur. Maybe she used his details. But why? What did she hope to achieve? Probably wanted to create problems for me at work, to make me realize it's better to help Ethan than to have trouble. I was furious. Family squabbles were one thing, but trying to harm me professionally was something else entirely. "Your mother has gone too far." "I'll talk to her," Michael promised. Talk to her definitely, and explain that if she tries to harm me at work again, I'll sue her for defamation. On Thursday, something else happened. A neighbor from the next street over, Mrs. Henderson, approached me. "Alice," she said sympathetically, "I heard about the tragedy in your family." "What tragedy?" I didn't understand. "Well, your mother-in-law was saying," she said her son-in-law was in an accident, he's in the hospital, and you need money for an operation. Clearly, the neighbor mixed up son with son-in-law, or Linda, was being vague. I was dumbfounded. This was outrageous. "Mrs. Henderson, where did you see my mother-in-law?" "At the clinic yesterday. I was there for a doctor's appointment, and she was in the waiting room. We got to talking. She's so worried about her son. Says you've already spent all your savings on his treatment." "And what else did she say?" "Well, that you might have to sell your house if the operation is expensive, but you're not giving up, you're fighting. She said you're such a good, caring daughter-in-law." I understood what was happening. Linda was shaping public opinion, telling neighbors a sob story about how we were spending all our money on Ethan's fictional medical bills. Then when we refused to help financially, it would look like we'd abandoned a sick relative. Cunning old fox. That evening, I had a huge fight with Michael. "Your mother is telling all the neighbors that you were in an accident and are in the hospital. She's saying we need money for an operation and might have to sell the house." Michael went pale. "Has she completely lost her mind?" "On the contrary, I think she's being very calculating, paving the way to make us look like scoundrels." "How so?" "It's simple. First, she tells everyone how good we are, how we help the family. Then, when we refuse to give Ethan money, she'll say, 'We've changed, become greedy.'" Michael rubbed his temples. "We need to find her urgently and talk to her." "How can we find her?" "She's upstate with relatives." "I'll call Aunt Tamara. Maybe she knows where Mom is." Aunt Tamara was Linda's cousin. Michael found her number and called. "Mikey." Aunt Tamara sounded surprised. How did you get my number? Linda said you two were fighting. Aunt Tamara is Mom with you. Yes, she's been here for a week, crying her eyes out that you and your wife abandoned her. Please, put her on the phone. I don't know. She said she doesn't want to talk to you. Aunt Tamara, this is very important. Mom has been telling the neighbors that I'm in the hospital. People are already asking about my health. What? In the hospital? Aunt Tamara was bewildered. Linda said Ethan was in the hospital. Ethan, what's wrong with him? She said he was in an accident, needs money for treatment. Michael looked at me astonished. Aunt Tamara, Ethan is fine. There was no accident. What? But Linda, Mom is deceiving everyone. Please put her on the phone. We heard footsteps, a muffled conversation in the background. Then Linda came to the phone. What do you want? She asked coldly. Mom, what are you doing? Why are you telling the neighbors I'm in the hospital? Not you, Ethan. Mom, Ethan is fine. Why are you lying? I'm not lying. Ethan really is sick, not physically, but mentally, because his own family has turned its back on him. I took the phone from Michael. Linda, you're spreading lies and you're filing complaints against me with state agencies under a false name. I didn't file anything. Under the name Sharov. That's your maiden name. A pause. Prove it. I will definitely prove it, and I'll sue you for defamation and fraud. What fraud? For impersonating someone else in official documents. Another pause. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you, stop your games or you'll have to deal with the law. How dare you threaten me, you upstart? Very easily, especially when I'm dealing with someone who's trying to sabotage my career. Linda was breathing heavily into the phone. Fine, she hissed finally. If you've chosen war, you'll get war. And she hung up. Michael looked at me anxiously. Do you think you did the right thing? What choice did I have? She's completely out of control. Now she'll definitely come up with something else. Let her. But let her know I'm not one to tolerate abuse. On Friday, Linda returned to the city and immediately took action. First, she came to my workplace. The security guard called and said an elderly woman claiming to be a relative was asking for me. Don't let her up, I requested. Tell her I'm busy. But half an hour later, the guard called again. Ms. Miller Alice's married name, this woman isn't leaving. Says she'll wait for you until evening. I realized it was easier to go down and talk to her than to let her create a scene at the bank. Linda was standing in the lobby holding a large bouquet of flowers and a box of chocolates. Alice, she exclaimed when she saw me. Finally! I was surprised. Yesterday she was at war with me, and today she was so sweet. Linda, why are you here? I want to apologize for our conversation yesterday. I was wrong. She held out the flowers and chocolates. The security guard watched us with interest, clearly expecting a family drama to unfold. Thank you, but that's not necessary. It is, Linda insisted. I realize I said too much. My nerves got the better of me because of Ethan. Linda, let's go outside. This isn't the place for family discussions. We stepped out of the bank. Linda continued her show of remorse. Alice, dear, let's forget all the bad stuff. We're family. What do you want? I want us to make peace. I realize I was wrong. We don't need to sell the house or do anything drastic. I was wary. Such a sudden change in mood was suspicious. And now what? And now I propose a compromise. Ethan and I will manage the debts ourselves, but maybe you could at least give him a temporary job. What kind of job? Well, Michael works at that auto shop, right? Maybe there's something for Ethan there. Michael indeed worked as a senior mechanic at a large auto service center. It was a good, stable job with a decent salary. Does Ethan know anything about cars? Of course he's very capable, a quick learner. I doubted it. Ethan didn't strike me as someone ready for manual labor. Linda, I don't make hiring decisions. That's not my department. But you can ask Michael, can't you? You can ask your husband. I can, but it's not a guarantee they have openings. Please try. Linda grabbed my hand. Ethan just needs a chance. He'll turn his life around, start living normally. Her voice held genuine pleading. Maybe she really understood she'd gone too far. All right, I agreed. I'll talk to Michael. Thank you, sweetie. Linda beamed. You won't regret it. That evening, I told Michael about the conversation with his mother. She's changed her tactics pretty quickly, he remarked. That's what I thought. Maybe she realized she hit a dead end. Or maybe she's planning something new. Anyway, about the job for Ethan, don't stress. Just find any excuse to say no. Okay, though maybe we should try, what if he actually gets his act together? I looked at my husband in surprise. Seriously, work might discipline him, and he could gradually pay off his debts. Michael, you know your brother. He'll last a week tops. Maybe. But at least we'll have tried. If he messes up, it'll be on you later if we didn't even try. I'll think about it. Over the weekend, we went to visit Michael's parents. Linda greeted us like honored guests. She'd set the table, baked pies, and was constantly fussing over us. How are things, kids? She asked sympathetically. How's work? How's your health? Such a drastic change in behavior was alarming. Just a week ago, she looked at me like an enemy, and now she was playing the loving mother-in-law. Mom, Michael said over tea, Alice mentioned you asked about a job for Ethan. I did. Linda nodded. But I'm not insisting. If there's no opportunity, then there's no opportunity. There is an opportunity, Michael said unexpectedly. We actually need an assistant in the car wash bay. I looked at my husband, surprised. We had agreed to find an excuse to refuse. Really? Linda was overjoyed. Oh, Mikey, thank you. But there's a condition, Michael added. The first screw up and Ethan's out. I won't cover for his mistakes. Of course, Ethan understands. By the way, where is he? I asked. He'll be here soon. I told him you were coming. Ethan appeared half an hour later. He didn't look his best wrinkled clothes, the smell of stale alcohol, red eyes, but he was behaving decently. Hey, Mike. He hugged his brother. Hey, Alice. He shook my hand and even smiled. His mother must have coached him. Heard you're offering me a job, he said to Michael. I am, but it's simple work. Washing cars. I don't care as long as it pays. It doesn't pay much. Maybe $2,000 a month, adjusted to a low-end U.S. wage for such work. That's fine. At least it's something. At the table, Ethan behaved himself, talked about his plans, promised to change, and thanked us for the help. Linda was glowing with happiness. See? She whispered to me. He's a good person. Life just battered him a bit. I nodded, but internally I was preparing for Ethan to mess everything up within a week or two. And I wasn't mistaken. Ethan lasted exactly 4 days at the job. On the first day, he was an hour late blaming traffic. On the second day, he managed to break the side mirror of an expensive car. On the third day, he was rude to a customer. And on the fourth day, he showed up drunk. Michael fired him on the spot. I told you so, I said to my husband that evening. Yeah, you were right, but at least we tried. The next day, an enraged Linda showed up at our house. How could you, she screamed at Michael, throw your own brother out on the street? Mom, he came to work drunk. So what it happens to everyone. It doesn't happen to me or to other normal people. You set him up, gave him the hardest job. Mom washing cars isn't the hardest job in the world. It's hard for Ethan. He's an intellectual. I couldn't take it anymore. Linda intellectuals don't show up to work drunk. And you stay out of it, she pounced on me. This concerns my husband's job, I retorted. Your husband, Linda mimicked. Everything is always yours. Michael made the decision to fire him himself. Under your influence, Michael stepped between us. Mom, enough. I make my own decisions. And this decision was the right one. Linda looked at her son with hatred. So the decision is final. Final. All right. Then I'm making a final decision too. What decision? Linda drew herself up and looked at us triumphantly. Since you don't want to help family, the family will help itself. In other ways. What ways? Michael asked warily. You'll find out very soon. You'll find out. And she left, slamming the door. What did she mean by that? I asked. No idea, but something tells me it's nothing good. We were wrong again. What Linda had planned surpassed all our expectations. It started on Monday morning when a car with county government plates pulled up to our house. 2 men in suits and a woman with a clipboard got out. Michael had already left for work, and I was about to leave. Seeing the officials, I got worried. What did they want from us? The senior man approached the gate. "Good morning. Are you the homeowner?" "Yes. What's this about?" "County Zoning Commission. We've received a complaint that your house was built with violations." I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. "What violations?" "Allegedly, you exceeded height restrictions, and there are property line encroachments. We need to conduct an inspection." "And who filed the complaint?" The woman consulted her documents. "A Ms. Linda Sharov. She claims to be a co-owner of the property and demands that justice be restored." So that was it. Linda had decided to attack us through official channels. "Can I see the documents?" I asked. The woman handed me the papers. There was indeed a statement from Linda Sharov claiming she had rights to our property inherited from some aunt. "This isn't true," I said. "The property belongs solely to us." "Then please present your property deeds," the senior man requested. My documents were all in perfect order. I showed them to the commission. "See, everything is clear. The property is registered in my name. There are no co-owners." "All right," the man nodded. "But we still have to conduct an inspection since a complaint was filed." The inspection lasted 2 hours. The commission measured, photographed, and wrote things down. I was nervous knowing that even if everything was in order, these procedures could drag on for months. "When will we get the results, Eanes?" I asked. "Within a month. If no violations are found, the case will be closed. And if you find any, then you'll have to correct the violations or demolish the structures." When the commission left, I immediately called Michael. "Your mother filed a complaint with the county. She claims she has rights to our property. A commission came, inspected everything for 2 hours. They said if they find violations, we might have to demolish the house." Michael swore so loudly my ears rang. "She's completely lost her mind." "Michael, we need a lawyer, urgently." "Yeah, I agree. I'll find out who we can talk to right now." That evening, we went to a lawyer. A young man listened to our story and shook his head. "Formally, your mother-in-law has the right to file such a complaint. The question is whether it's substantiated. And what if she presents some forged documents?" I asked. "Then that's a criminal matter. Forgery of documents is a serious offense. But first, you need to prove the documents are forged." "How do we do that?" "Forensic analysis, but it's time-consuming and expensive. It's better to prepare a rock-solid defense immediately." The lawyer explained what documents we needed to gather and who to contact for official statements. There was a lot of work ahead. "How much will this cost?" Michael asked. "If it goes to court, at least $10,000 to $15,000 minimum, plus expert fees, document retrieval, another $5,000 or so." We exchanged glances. It was a lot of money, but what could we do? And how long will it take if the county finds violations and it goes to court? 6 months minimum, maybe a year. Leaving the lawyer's office, I felt wrung out like a lemon. "Do you realize what your mother is doing?" I asked Michael. "I realize. And you know what enough is enough. It's time to show her we're not defenseless." "What do you mean?" "Tomorrow, I'm going to her place and having a serious talk. Let her know there will be consequences for her games." The next day, Michael took a day off and went to his mother's. He returned looking grimmer than a thundercloud. "Well," I asked. "She denies everything. Says she doesn't know anyone named Sharov who would file a complaint and hasn't filed any complaints herself. Claims someone must have used her identity, that scammers are at work." "And you believed her?" "Of course not. But I can't prove anything. She's as sly as a fox." I thought for a moment. "What if we hire a private investigator?" "An investigator? Why?" "Let him tail her. Maybe we can catch her doing something." "It'll be expensive. Cheaper than fighting this in court for 6 months." Michael agreed. We found a detective agency and hired them to surveil Linda. The detective was an experienced man in his 50s. "We'll document all her contacts' meetings, trips," he explained. "If she's up to something, we'll find out." On Wednesday, a new crisis erupted at my work. An audit team from the bank's corporate headquarters arrived. It turned out someone had sent an anonymous letter claiming I was taking bribes for approving loans. My boss called me in. "Alice, do you have any enemies?" "Yes," I admitted honestly. "Serious ones. My mother-in-law. We're in conflict." Mr. Peterson shook his head. "Family squabbles shouldn't be brought to work." "I'm not bringing them. She's trying to harm me." "Well, the audit will show. If you're clean, you have nothing to worry about." The audit lasted 3 days. The auditors went through all my files for the past year, interviewed colleagues, and examined documents. In the end, they found no violations. The letter was clearly written by someone unfamiliar with banking procedures, the lead auditor said. "It's full of such nonsense that it's obviously slander." I breathed a sigh of relief, but the bad taste lingered. Linda was relentless. On Friday, the detective brought the first results. "Your mother-in-law is a very active lady," he reported. "In 1 week, she met with 2 lawyers, went to the city archives, and visited a notary public." What was she looking for in the archives? Documents related to your property, studying its history. And what did she find out? It's unclear yet, but tomorrow she has a meeting with someone named Fletcher. From what I overheard, this man promised to help her with some documents. For a fee, of course. The amount wasn't mentioned, but they were talking about serious help. Michael and I looked at each other. "Do you think she's trying to buy fake documents?" my husband asked. "Quite possibly. The question is, where will she get the money?" We got the answer on Saturday. The detective called in the morning. "Your mother-in-law went to a bank yesterday and took out a loan using her apartment as collateral." "How much did she get?" $50,000. Her apartment is quite valuable downtown. Adjusted to a significant loan amount for a potentially modest but well-located apartment, I gasped. 50,000? What does she need that kind of money for? And what next? From the bank, she went to this Fletcher guy, stayed with him for 2 hours. I saw her hand him a thick envelope. We got pictures, of course. The detective showed us the photos. They clearly showed Linda handing a middle-aged man an envelope obviously stuffed with cash. "Who is this Fletcher?" I checked. "Works in the city records office. Has a criminal record. Was charged with bribery 2 years ago, but got off with probation." So she's buying fake documents from him. Looks like it. That evening, Michael and I discussed the situation. "Mom's completely lost it," my husband said, shaking his head. "Mortgaged her apartment, $50,000. That's very serious. She must be planning something big." What could she be planning? The answer came on Monday. A process server came to our house. "Alice Miller." "Yes." "I'm serving you with a court summons. A lawsuit has been filed against you for division of property." I took the documents with trembling hands. Plaintiff Linda Sharov demand to recognize her share in the ownership of our house and land. Amount of claim $100 or $1,000, adjusted to represent a significant portion of a house's value. "On what grounds?" I asked. "The lawsuit states that the plaintiff is the heir of the previous owner of the property and is entitled to half of the real estate." When the process server left, I sat on the porch steps, my hands shaking, my head spinning. So that's what Linda had bought for $50,000, fake inheritance documents. Michael rushed home from work as soon as I called him. "Mom's completely insane," he cursed, reading the lawsuit. "What inheritance? What Aunt Vera Sharov? Did you ever know this aunt?" "Never heard of her. Mom didn't have any relatives in the city at all." "So the documents are definitely fake." "Of course they're fake. But how do we prove it?" We went back to the lawyer. He studied the lawsuit and whistled. "This is serious. If the court believes these documents, you could lose half your house. But the documents are forged. That needs to be proven, and right now they look quite convincing." The lawyer showed us copies of the documents attached to the lawsuit. There was a will from a certain Vera N. Sharov in favor of Linda, a death certificate, and documents supposedly proving this. Vera owned half of our property. How is this possible? I wondered. Corruption in the archives isn't uncommon. For money, they can find any documents. So what do we do? Order a forensic document examination, but it's expensive and time-consuming. Plus, you need a strong defense in court. How much will all this cost? Minimum $30,000, maybe more, adjusted to reflect substantial legal fees for a complex case. We left the lawyer's office dejected. "Do you realize what your mother is doing?" I asked Michael. "She could put us out on the street." "She won't. We'll prove the documents are fake. And if we can't," Michael was silent for a moment, "then we'll have to sell the house and split the money with her." And according to her plan, we were supposed to give half the money to Ethan for his debts. Probably. I felt a surge of fury. This crazy old woman wanted to take our home away for her loser son. "No," I said firmly. "I won't let her rob us." "What do you suggest?" "Play by her rules. If she started a war, she'll get a war." That same evening, I called the detective. "I need all the information you can get on this Fletcher, where he lives, who he associates with, what other shady deals he's involved in. That will cost more. Doesn't matter. The result is what's important." The detective took the case. 3 days later, I had a complete dossier on Fletcher. It turned out he not only dealt in forged documents, but also owed back taxes. And he had a mistress his wife didn't know about. "Excellent leverage material," the detective said. "What do you suggest?" "We can approach him, explain that it's better to cooperate with us than to have problems with the law. And if he doesn't agree, then we hand over the information to the DA's office. Let them deal with his little schemes." I didn't like the idea of blackmail, but we had no choice. Linda had started the dirty game first. Arrange a meeting with him. The meeting took place in a coffee shop downtown. Fletcher was a nervous man in his 40s with constantly darting eyes. "What do you want from me?" he asked as soon as I sat at his table. "I want to talk about the documents you prepared for Linda Sharov." Fletcher paled. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You know, the will of Vera N. Sharov. Remember?" "I don't remember any will." I pulled out the photos the detective had taken. "And what's this? You receiving an envelope of money from Ms. Sharov." Fletcher looked at the photos and swallowed hard. That's not what you think." "Oh, what is it then?" "She was paying me back an old debt." "Mr. Fletcher." I used his full name to show I knew everything about him. "Let's be honest. You fabricated forged documents. That's a felony." "I didn't fabricate anything." "All right. Then we'll pass these photos to the DA's office. Let them investigate. And while they're at it, they can look into your tax debts." Fletcher shrank into his chair. "What do you want from me?" "The truth, and a sworn affidavit stating that the documents are forgeries." "I can't do that." "You can. Otherwise, in a week, they'll be searching your house, and your wife will find out not only about your business dealings, but also about Svetlana." Using a plausible American name for the mistress. The mention of his mistress finally broke Fletcher. "How do you know about Svetlana?" "That's not important. What's important is that now you're going to cooperate with us." Fletcher agreed. The next day, he went to our lawyer and gave a sworn statement that at Linda's request, he had manufactured forged documents for a sum of $2,500, a portion of the $50K loan. "Excellent work," the lawyer praised. "With this testimony, we'll not only defeat her lawsuit, but also file a countersuit." "Countersuit for defamation and attempted fraud. We'll demand compensation for emotional distress and reimbursement of legal expenses." On Thursday, we filed the countersuit, and on Friday, something I didn't expect happened. Linda came to my workplace, this time without flowers or smiles. Her face was like stone. "We need to talk," she said, about what you're doing to my family." We stepped out of the bank. Linda was clearly struggling to contain her anger. "You bribed Fletcher," she accused me. "I didn't bribe anyone. I simply explained the consequences of manufacturing forged documents to him. He gave false testimony, truthful testimony. You did indeed order fakes from him, didn't you?" Linda clenched her fists. "You think you're so smart? Think you've won? I think I'm protecting my home from fraudsters." "Fraudsters!" Linda exploded. "How dare you? Very easily, especially when dealing with someone who spends $50,000 on fake documents. That was my money, which you borrowed against your apartment, and now you have a huge debt." Linda fell silent. It seemed the reality of the financial pit she dug for herself was just sinking in. "And you," "Are you satisfied?" she asked quietly. "I'm satisfied that I protected my home." "Your home?" Linda exploded again. "Everything is always yours. What about your husband's family? For help and support, not for robbery." "What robbery? Ethan is family." "See, Ethan is a grown man who should be responsible for his own actions." Linda stood there breathing heavily. I saw a mixture of hatred and despair in her eyes. "Fine," she hissed finally. "You've chosen war, there will be war." "Linda, the war is already over. You lost." "We'll see who lost." She turned and walked away. I watched her go with a sense of unease. Something in her tone told me she wasn't going to give up. And indeed, the following week, a new phase of our confrontation began. It started with our electricity being cut off. A crew from the power company arrived and said there was a complaint about an illegal connection to the grid. "What illegal connection?" Michael fumed. "All our paperwork is in order." "Possibly," the lead electrician shrugged. "But there's a complaint. Until it's sorted out, the power is off." We spent 3 days without electricity. Luckily, we had a generator in the garage. Then the water was shut off, also due to a complaint about an illegal tap into the main pipe. Then the county health department came to test the water quality in our well. Someone had reported that we were poisoning the groundwater. "This is absurd," I yelled at yet another commission. "Maybe it is absurd, Amna," the commission chairman agreed. "But we're obligated to investigate." Every inspection took time and frayed our nerves. I realized it was a planned attack. Someone was methodically bombarding all agencies with complaints against us. "Do you guess who it is?" I asked Michael. "Mom, of course. She's decided to wear us down. And what do? Endure. Sooner or later, she'll run out of steam." But Linda didn't run out of steam. On the contrary, the attacks became more sophisticated. We started receiving bills for supposedly unpaid services. For trash removal we never ordered for road repairs we didn't participate in. Summonses to court arrived for lawsuits from people we'd never seen. We were accused of owing money, offending someone, stealing something. Each time we had to prove our innocence. It consumed a huge amount of time and money. "How much longer can this go on?" I pleaded after another court hearing. "As long as she has money, it will continue," Michael answered grimly. "And how much money does she have? That $50,000 loan minus what she spent on Fletcher. I think $45,000 is still left. With that kind of money, she can torment us for a year." And then I realized we needed to hit the cause, not the symptoms. "Michael, what if we cut off her money supply? How?" "I have an idea. Your mother took out a loan against her apartment, right?" "Yes." "And what if the bank finds out she's spending the loan money on illegal activities?" Michael thought for a moment. "Banks don't like it when loan money is used for purposes other than stated or for illegal things." "Exactly. Especially if there's proof." We had proof. Fletcher's testimony photos of the money transfer documents about the forged certificates. I went to the bank where Linda had taken out her loan and told the loan manager the whole story, providing documentation. "I see." The manager nodded, studying the documents. "Your mother-in-law has violated the terms of the loan agreement. We have the right to demand early repayment." "And what does that mean? She'll have to return the entire sum within a month. If she doesn't, the apartment will be sold at auction." A week later, Linda received a notice from the bank. The loan was being called in. She had to repay the full $50,000 within 30 days. Of course, she didn't have that kind of money. Most of it had been spent on the fake documents and her attacks against us. Michael went to see his mother. "What did she say?" I asked when he returned. "She cried, said she'll be homeless now." "And what did you tell her?" "That she brought it on herself. She should have thought before, and I also offered to make peace. If she stops her attacks, we'll help with the loan." "How will we help?" "We'll give her money for a partial repayment. The bank might agree to restructure the remaining balance." I thought about it. On one hand, I felt sorry for the old woman. On the other hand, she had brought this upon herself. And if we help, will she start her games again? I hope not. This lesson should have taught her. "How much money does she need?" "About $10,000. Then the bank will agree to let her keep the apartment with a restructured loan." $10,000. That was almost all our savings. But what else can we do, okay? I agreed. But on one condition. What condition? She officially renounces all claims to our house and signs a statement that she won't bother us anymore. Michael went to his mother with the proposal. Linda agreed to all conditions. The next day we met at the lawyer's office. Linda looked older and tired. All her former arrogance had vanished. "Linda," the lawyer said, "do you understand what you're signing?" "I understand. I renounce all claims to Alice's house and property, and I pledge not to take any actions against her." The documents were signed. We transferred $10,000 to the bank. The loan was restructured on more favorable terms. "Well, there you go," I said to Linda after all the paperwork was done. "Now you can live peacefully." Linda nodded but said nothing. I could see she was still angry, but she couldn't do anything anymore. For a few days it was quiet. No inspections, no complaints, no court summons. I started to relax, thinking the war was over. But it was only a pause before the final assault. The first alarm bell was a call from Mrs. Davis on Tuesday morning. "Alice, dear, what's going on with your house? Yesterday, some men were walking around measuring everything, taking pictures." "What men?" "Men in suits with some kind of tablets. Said they were appraisers." My heart sank. "Appraisers? Why did you find out who sent them?" "No, I didn't. They did everything quickly and left. But the neighbors said the car had plates from a real estate agency." I thanked Mrs. Davis and immediately called Michael. "Appraisers came to our house. They were measuring and photographing something." "Appraisers?" He was surprised. "We didn't call anyone." "Exactly. Which means someone else did. Mom." "But why?" "I don't know, but I don't like this." That evening, we checked the yard. Indeed, there were signs of someone else's presence, trampled grass marks from stakes used for measuring. "What were they doing here?" Michael asked, puzzled. "Probably assessing the value of the house, but why would anyone need to know the value of our house?" We got the answer on Wednesday. Linda came to our house, and not alone. She was with a man in his 50s in an expensive suit. "Good afternoon," Linda said when I opened the gate. "May we come in? We need to talk." Her voice was strange, a mix of guilt and triumph. About what I thought we settled everything. There are new circumstances, very important ones. I reluctantly let them into the house. The man silently looked around the living room, mentally appraising something. "Who is this?" I asked. "Alexander Thompson," the man introduced himself. "Realtor." "And why has a realtor come to my house?" Linda sat on the sofa. The man remained standing. "Alice, we really need to talk seriously. Where's Michael?" "At work. Say what you want to say." Linda hesitated, then straightened up resolutely. "You see, the situation has changed. Ethan has new problems." "What other problems?" "His creditors sued him. Now he's facing not just bankruptcy, but criminal charges for fraud." I shrugged. "And what's that to me?" "He needs money for a good lawyer, a lot of money." "How much?" $100,000. Adjusted to be a very large sum for legal fees. I laughed. "Linda, have you completely lost your mind? Where would I get $100,000? Linda stood up and looked at me with cold determination. "You're going to sell your house. Today you move out with your things. I'm selling your house. I already have a buyer. We'll pay off my older son's debts and we'll do a major renovation in my apartment," she declared. I was silent for a few seconds, processing what I'd heard. "What did you say?" "You heard me. Mr. Thompson has already found a buyer. Good price, quick deal." The realtor nodded. $700,000 cash. We can close the deal in a week. Plausible price for a nice suburban house? I looked at my mother-in-law, not believing my ears. "Are you suggesting I sell my house?" "Our house," Linda corrected. "Michael is also an owner." "Michael will never agree." "We'll see." There was an unhealthy certainty in Linda's voice. "And even if he agreed, I wouldn't sell my house for your sons." Linda stood up and approached me. "Alice, you don't understand the seriousness of the situation." "I understand. Your son got into trouble again and you want me to bail him out. If we don't help Ethan, he'll go to prison for a long time. Let him. Maybe it'll teach him a lesson." Linda's face contorted. "How can you say that? He's family." He's a grown man who should be responsible for his actions. So you refuse to help, refuse to sell the house? Absolutely and irrevocably. Linda sat back down on the sofa. A strange smile appeared on her face. All right, since you've decided that I'm making a decision too. What decision? Linda pulled some documents from her purse. Here's a certificate stating I'm in a difficult financial situation. And here's a doctor's note saying I need constant care. And according to the law, children are obligated to support their disabled parents and provide them with housing. I felt my blood run cold. What are you getting at? I'm getting at the fact that if you don't want to help voluntarily, you'll help forcibly. Explain more clearly. Linda smiled triumphantly. I'm suing Michael, demanding he provide support, including housing. And since he doesn't have his own housing, he'll be obligated to provide me with a share in your house. I stared at my mother-in-law, stunned. That's impossible. Very possible. I've already consulted with a lawyer. The court can oblige a son to allocate a share of the family home to me. But the house is mine, formally. But practically you're a family, and a family is obligated to care for elderly parents. The realtor coughed. If you'll allow me, I'll explain the legal nuances. I won't allow it. I cut him off. Get out of here, both of you. Wait. Linda stopped me. I haven't finished. I'm not interested. Oh, but this will interest you. Mr. Thompson isn't just a realtor. He represents a company that buys distressed properties. What distressed properties? Those whose owners are experiencing financial difficulties, can't maintain large houses, pay taxes, utilities. I was beginning to understand where she was going with this. Continue. If the court obliges Michael to give me a share in the house, I can demand its sale as a co-owner. On what grounds? On the grounds that the house is too expensive to maintain. It's better to sell it and divide the money. The realtor nodded. Such a practice exists. Courts often decide on the forced sale of real estate at the request of one of the co-owners. I felt the ground disappear from under me. Could this old witch really take my house away? And how much do you want for your silence? I asked. $200, $1,000, Linda answered quickly. $100,000 for Ethan's lawyer, $100,000 for me to pay off my loan. I don't have that kind of money. You do in the house. You sell the house, give us $200, $1,000, and keep the rest for yourself. And where would I live? You'll buy a smaller apartment. For $500, $1,000, you can find a very decent place. I stood up and paced the room, my mind racing, searching for a way out. And if I refuse, then we'll get half the house through the court and still force a sale. Michael won't support you. Michael is a good son. He won't abandon his mother in trouble. We'll see about that. Linda stood up. Think about it until tomorrow. If you agree voluntarily, we'll conduct the sale quickly and without unnecessary problems. If not, we'll go through the court. And if it's through the court, then what? Then the process will drag on for 6 months. All that time, I'll have the right to live in the house as a co-owner. Can you imagine what that will be like? I imagined it and shuddered. Living in the same house with that woman for 6 months would be worse than prison. When they left, I sat in the armchair and covered my face with my hands. Were all our efforts in vain? Would Linda finally get her way? Michael came home from work late. I told him about his mother's visit. Mom's gone completely ballistic, he said, shaking his head. Demanding support. That's insane. Insane, but it might work. I already called the lawyer. And what did he say? He said it's formally possible. If the court recognizes that you have obligations to support your mother, it can compel you to give her a share in the house. Michael rubbed his temples. Even if so, we don't have to sell the house. We might not, but then Mom would get the right to live with us as a co-owner. God, I can imagine what that would be like. I can imagine too, and I don't like it. We were silent, thinking over the situation. What if we retitle the house solely in your name? Michael suggested. I'll give up my share. Then the court might consider it a fraudulent transfer, especially if it's done shortly before the legal proceedings. Damn it, she's got us cornered. Not yet. We have until tomorrow to think. But there wasn't much to think about. There were two options: either sell the house and give Linda $200,000 or go to court for 6 months and likely end up selling it anyway. The phone rang in the morning. Linda. Well, have you thought about it? I've thought about it. And what's your decision? I took a deep breath. Linda, come over, let's talk. So you agree? Let's talk, I said. An hour later, Linda was at our house. This time, she came alone without the realtor. Well, she asked impatiently. I looked at this woman who had poisoned our lives for 2 years, who had tried to deceive us, rob us, deprive us of our home. Linda, I have a proposal. What? That today you move out with your things. Your apartment I'm selling. I already have a buyer. We'll pay off my husband's debts to you, and in my house we'll do a major renovation, I declared, quoting her own words back at her. Linda was stunned. What? Get out of my house. And don't you dare tell me what to do, I yelled, no longer holding back my fury. Your house is being sold, not mine. Linda opened her mouth, but I didn't let her get a word in. How dare you? She tried to start her usual song, but I cut her off. Shut up, I roared. For 2 years, you've terrorized my family, tried to take my house, extorted money for your loser son. But Michael is my husband, and he's on my side. So get the hell out of here and don't ever show your face in my house again. You can't kick me out, Linda seethed. I'm Michael's mother. You can be the Queen of England for all I care. In my house, I decide who stays. Linda jumped up from the sofa. You think you've won? Think it's that simple? I know it's that simple. Your games are over. We'll see. I'll sue. I'll get my share of the house. Go ahead, sue. Just remember, if you get a share in my house, then I'll get a share in your apartment. By the same principle. Michael is your son, after all, and has inheritance rights. Linda stopped dead in her tracks. What inheritance? Just that. If the court recognizes family obligations as grounds for obtaining a share in real estate, it works both ways. You get a share in my house, I get a share in your apartment. That's impossible. Very possible. I've already consulted with a lawyer. If you start the process, we'll file a countersuit. Linda turned pale. It seemed she was only now realizing that her own tactics could backfire on her. But I have a loan. Your problem. Solve it yourself. Ethan will go to jail. Let him. Maybe he'll learn something. Linda stood there, breathing heavily. I saw a mixture of rage and bewilderment in her eyes. You're heartless. I'm protecting my family. The same thing you're doing, only I'm better at it. Michael will find out. He'll understand what kind of person you really are. Michael already knows everything, and he's on my side. At that moment, Michael walked into the house. He had taken the day off to be present for the conversation. Hi, Mom. He greeted her coldly. Mikey. Linda rushed to him. Did you hear what your wife is saying? I heard, and I fully support her. How can you? Ethan is your brother. He was my brother. Now I don't know who he is. Mom, enough. You've crossed every line. You tried to take our house, terrorized us for 2 years, spent insane amounts of money on your schemes. I wanted to help the family. You wanted to force us to sponsor Ethan, but we are not obligated to support a grown man. Linda looked at her son, then at me. She understood she had lost. Completely. So, that's your final word. Final, Michael said firmly. All right, then this is my final word too. I disown you. I no longer have a younger son. As you wish, Mom. Linda headed for the door. At the threshold, she turned back. You'll regret this decision. Mom, I already regret it. I regret not doing this sooner. When the door closed behind her, Michael and I stood in silence for a long time. Do you regret it? I asked. What? Fighting with Mom. Michael thought for a moment. I don't know. On one hand, I feel sorry for her. On the other, she brought this on herself. And if we had agreed to sell the house a year from now, she would have come back with new demands. Ethan would have gotten into something else, and it all would have started over. Do you think she'll calm down? Sooner or later, yes. She'll run out of money, and her energy too. Ethan will either go to jail or finally get his act together. And if he doesn't, then that's his problem. We've paid our dues. That evening, I stood on the deck looking at my yard, my house, my fortress, which I had defended in an unfair war. Yes, I had won, but the victory hadn't come easy. 2 years of stress, a lot of money, a rupture with my husband's family. Was it worth it? I looked at Michael, who was watering flowers in the garden, at the house we had built over 5 years, at the yard where we planned to plant an apple orchard. Yes, it was worth it. A month later, we learned that Linda had indeed been evicted from her apartment for non-payment of the loan. Ethan received 3 years probation and moved to another city to look for a better life. And we stayed in our house and finally started living peacefully. Though sometimes at night I had nightmares where Linda was standing on our doorstep again with new demands. But those were only dreams. In reality, the war was over, and I had won it. Not a perfect victory, not a Hollywood happy ending, just an ordinary life story where I had to choose between family peace and my own well-being. And I chose myself, my home, my peaceful life. Maybe some will say I was cruel, that I should have helped the old woman sacrifice my home for the sake of family peace. But I know one thing: if you don't protect yourself, no one else will. And the home you built with your own hands is worth fighting for, even if the enemy turns out to be your husband's own mother. Even if you have to choose between kindness and justice. I chose justice, and I don't regret it.